In the dim living room, you sit there, pensive, watching the yellow streetlights cast long shadows through the window. It marks the eve of the wedding you have awaited for 3 long years. Suddenly, a mysterious black box appears at your doorstep. Inside, nothing but a cold USB drive labeled with a date exactly 10 years into the future. You plug it in, and the screen lights up, freezing your heart instantly. You witness your perfect partner stealing a passionate kiss with a stranger amidst a pouring night rain. With a future of betrayal exposed right before your very eyes, the question is, will you call off everything? Or will you commit to this marriage to defy destiny? Before we cast the dice of fate, hit subscribe to the What If channel now to support us in decoding the darkest corners of love. Deciding to bury that USB in the deepest drawer you can find, you walk down the aisle with a radiant smile that essentially fails to hide the worry in your eyes. The first few years pass in a sort of feigned tranquility as you strive to be the perfect husband, desperate to prove that cursed tape wrong. But here is the reality. Every act of care you offer is underpinned by a covert surveillance driven by calculation and fear. Whenever they return late or a phone buzzes in the dead of night, the image of that kiss from the tape haunts your mind like a ghost. Analyzing every minute gesture becomes your absolute obsession, from how they smile at colleagues to those unusual silences during dinner. The shadow of suspicion begins to creep into every corner of the house, turning a happy home into the crime scene of an offense that hasn't even happened yet. You convince yourself that this is for the sake of love, but you are actually building cold, defensive walls to block out potential pain. They still love you unconditionally, yet you sometimes catch their confused gaze as they watch you staring into the void. Controlling their schedule becomes a habit disguised as care, as you demand to know their exact whereabouts every single minute. Surprise gifts are no longer for romance. They serve as tests to detect any abnormal reactions. Time drifts by, yet the obsession with that 10-year mark never fades. Instead, it becomes sharper and more suffocating. You are living in 2 parallel realities, maintaining a happy facade while a broken future screams silently inside you. It escapes your notice that your high-alert state is slowly draining the oxygen from this relationship day by day. The tape from the future has become a distorted lens, rendering you unable to see their true self anymore. Playing a chess game with fate, you believe you can stay one step ahead to change the final checkmate. As the 10-year mark approaches, the air in the house becomes thick and heavy, like the sky before a massive storm. Secretly checking their phone becomes a nightly ritual while they sleep, as you scrutinize every message and call log. Your casual questions gradually morph into harsh interrogations regarding faithfulness and social relationships. They begin to feel suffocated by your baseless jealousy and excessive control, causing the smile on their lips to fade away. Arguments erupt more frequently, not due to a lack of love, but because trust has been eroded by suspicion without evidence. Seeing the fatigue in their eyes, your fear misinterprets it as a sign of boredom and a desire to find someone else. The more you fear losing them, the tighter you grip, unintentionally pushing them into a state of loneliness within their own home. They start returning home later, avoiding your probing gaze, just to find peace in spaces outside. You hire a private investigator, essentially transforming yourself into a stalker, frantically hunting for evidence of a crime never committed. Every explanation they offer is dismissed, for in your mind, the betrayal has already been predetermined by that tape. The distance between the two of you is no longer geographical, but a chasm of understanding and emotional sharing. Becoming cold and bitter, you use silence to punish them for mistakes you imagine they are about to make. Once filled with laughter, the house now holds only heavy footsteps and weary sighs from 2 strangers. They sob, asking why you have changed, but you only look at them with the eyes of a judge awaiting a verdict. Believing this strictness is necessary to keep them, you are unaware that you are shattering the most fragile crystal vase with your own hands. That fateful night finally arrives, with rain pouring down exactly as you witnessed in the tape 10 years ago. They text, saying they won't be home for dinner, and your intuition screams that the moment of judgment has struck. Donning a raincoat, you rush out, tracking their location to a deserted cafe hidden in a small alley. Standing huddled in the shadows under the opposite eave, the cold rain slaps your face, yet it feels less freezing than your constricting heart. Through the steam-fogged glass, you see them sitting there, shoulders trembling, facing a stranger with a gentle demeanor. The script plays out exactly as you watched, with the stranger gently holding their hand and leaning in for a comforting kiss. Anger flares up, urging you to rush in and catch them, but your steps falter upon seeing their expression. It is not a kiss of lust or secret passion, but the desperate clinging of a drowning person needing a lifebuoy. You realize the stranger is the psychologist they have been secretly seeing for months to treat depression caused by a suffocating marriage. That kiss was merely a moment of weakness, a fleeting search for warmth and understanding that you have refused to give them for 10 years. Your suspicion, toxic control, and coldness have pushed them into complete isolation. You realize that had you never watched that tape, you would have loved them with a pure heart, and this moment would never have existed. The time paradox has ruthlessly completed its loop, turning your fear into the direct cause of this tragic ending. You are not the victim of a prophecy, but the author who realized it through your own insecurity. They did not betray you out of a loss of love, but betrayed you because they needed human warmth to survive. Standing rooted in the rain, the phantom USB in your mind shatters, leaving the naked truth that you are the one who killed this marriage. Trying to run from the future, you inadvertently sprinted down the shortest path leading straight to it. The story closes with a belated regret for a trust that crumbled from within your own soul. Your frantic effort to prevent the future became the direct agent creating this painful tragedy. Psychology calls this the golem effect, where negative expectations unwittingly drive others to act in that terrible direction. Robert Merton once said, "Self-fulfilling prophecies turn initial misconceptions into cruel truths." Love lacking trust is like a body lacking oxygen. It will slowly die in suffocation and suspicion. Excessive control has never been love. It is the embodiment of profound insecurity and selfishness. We often fear the ghost of a future 10 years away while forgetting to cherish the happiness of the present. If you had chosen complete trust from the beginning, perhaps the rain tonight would not feel so cold. The future is not a fixed destiny, but is written by our attitude and beliefs today. Do not let invisible worries rob you of the tangible happiness you hold tightly in your hands. Hit subscribe to the What If channel now to support us as we continue to decode the hidden corners of human psychology. In your opinion, can silence and acceptance of fate change a foretold destiny? Leave a comment below so we can discuss this painful paradox together.